My name's Piers. I'm the editor-in-chief and founder of PiersFK.com. I'm here with Amanda Dameron, who is editor-in-chief of Dwell Media. And we're here to talk about community, and especially building community and building dialogue with a design community and design audience. Over the last few years, media publications, including Dwell, have had to look at how it kind of interacts, how it shares information, and how it listens to the voice of the audience. And so we're going to touch upon some of those points in the next 30 minutes.
Yes. Hi, everyone.
So in our little pre-chat, we talked about your changing role. I was surprised to hear about how active you were in terms of listening to the social media. I would have thought an editor-in-chief spends all their day, running meetings, deciding strategies, editorial plans. Can you just touch upon that a little bit and the importance?
Sure. It was a long time ago when I started out reading letters to the editor that actually came in on paper to the magazine that I worked for, and it's always been a part of every job I've had as an editor to man that portion, that channel that comes back into the publication. But with the advent of the internet, social media, that added a new dimension to the way that people could communicate with the publication, with the editors. And only those magazines that were able to recognize that and pay attention to that and respond to that are the ones that I think are able to hopefully stay relevant in the marketplace. So as it relates to, Twitter or Facebook, when I started working for Dwell, I was the director of just the digital portion, and so it grew organically from there. And so when I took over Dwell's Twitter, it had 8,000 followers, and now it has 500,000, wow, which is amazing, and it's something that is that's something I'm very proud of, and it's hard to let go of. So yeah, I want to know what people are saying.
I mean, what has changed then in terms of, aren't you the sort of curators, the voice? Aren't you the guide to design?
Well,
why listen?
I mean, that's a very interesting question. I mean, when we're talking about magazines and publications, sorry if this is ringing. If we're talking about publications and what they've been traditionally, it was always a small group of people that had access to rarefied information, and they had a platform from which to share that information. And it used to be that information was, I can't think of a better word other than rarefied. Mm-hmm. And so there was great power in that. And so at that point, and using that kind of platform, you're all transmit and there's no receive. And when you have power, you can do that, I suppose. Yeah. But with the shift of the way that people want to get ideas or get inspiration, it's more of a conversation now. Mm-hmm. People, it's so far beyond sitting down and getting a piece of paper and a pencil to write out a letter and then mailing it to the editor and maybe they'll respond. Yeah. Someone can say something to me at any time about anything I'm doing, and I see it, of course I do, and I want to.
But isn't that just like a lot of noise, isn't it? To write a letter takes a lot of time and investment, and then to leave a comment, mm-hmm, to tweet, yeah, it's pretty easy. They must create a lot of noise. How do you filter?
I don't know. I have not found it unmanageable to stay on top of what's being said to Dwell, whether it's through our feedback emails or it's through Facebook or Twitter or any of our other platforms. I haven't found it to be a difficulty to keep up with it because I think that the conversation is incredibly important and I want to know what works and what doesn't. I mm-hmm. certainly don't think that all of my ideas work. I've had a lot of ideas that really sucked. And, yeah, I am not, I want to have that conversation. Yeah. So in any case, I don't find it unmanageable. I actually really enjoy it. I need it. I need that feedback to be mm-hmm. able to continue to, I hope, make good storytelling.
Can you talk a little bit about how that kind of conversation with the audience has led to the development of any particular editorial or any focus?
I definitely understand right away if people are upset by a story or a subject or a photograph. A lot of it has to do with safety. Whether that's people writing in and saying that guy should be wearing goggles, or those stairs should be, illegal, or you're irresponsible, to what about the birds with the glass houses? Yeah. Don't you care about the birds in the glass? What are you going to do about the glass? I hear a lot about that. And so because of that, I'm going to do a story about glass and birds. Watch for it. It's coming. We're going to talk to architects and say, how much are you thinking about the birds, and, what kinds of glass can we be talking about in this instance? Obviously, it resonates with people, and if it resonates with people, I'm interested. And I'm interested to continue the conversation far beyond just the static point in the magazine when we could be telling a story. I want to continue it digitally, and I want to continue it in a live context as well. And,
so traditionally, those subjects wouldn't kind of come up. You'd be taking the ideas that are coming through from architects. And
safety is always an issue, always. And we try to be responsible. We try to be responsible. And also, we're always careful to point out, we take it into consideration whenever we are showing imagery. I mean, I never want to just passively be labeling the images and giving you information that you can already tell yourself. I mean, that's why the captions are far beyond the naturally lit living room is on the second floor. It's like, well, I know that because I can see it and I can look at the floor plan. So maybe just tell me something that I can't tell just by looking at the image. Use that rarefied connection that you have to the makers, the designers and architects who actually created it, and share that kind of information that I can't just find anywhere. That's our job. So, sorry, that was a tangent. But anyway, captions. I think about them a lot.
So talk to me about some of the platforms that you're using to listen and communicate.
Sure.
And how they differ.
Okay, sure. Well, there is always the commenting on dwell.com. And then there is the commenting that comes in on Facebook, Twitter, and I'll come back and talk about how they're different. Yeah. Facebook and Twitter are really important to me to pay attention. We have other channels, but those I pay very, very close attention to. I also pay attention to what's being said to our Dwell on Design portion, which is our conference that we have annually for design and architecture in LA. I pay close attention to that because that's a separate channel, but still under the umbrella of Dwell Media. And people still do write letters. It does happen occasionally. I love it when it does happen, but I definitely pay attention to that. So it's interesting. On Facebook, people, we get a lot of just one word judgment, like beautiful or ugly or stupid or, obviously I'm not interested in commentary that says, stupid. I'm looking for criticism, and that's okay, as long as it's constructive and as long as it's about design and architecture. I'm not interested in hearing whether or not you think that person is attractive or ugly. I'm not interested in hearing whether you believe that's really their dog or not. It is. I'm not interested in, these kinds of questions. So anyway, if it's about design and architecture, I'm absolutely interested. Yes, there's the other part of it, but, with Twitter, it really helps me to understand when a story is successful, and not only a story, but an issue. Also, I use it, I can tell when people get the issues, when the subscribers get them in hand, because people like to take pictures of the cover with a coffee. And I really like the fact that they do that. They'll send me a picture and they're like, Saturday, or, I can't wait to look at the new Dwell. That's awesome when they do that. So I appreciate it for that. And then obviously, you can just tell by favoriting and retweeting whether or not something is valuable to the audience. But
and then and then just tell me about some of the other channels. Tell me about Pinterest. Pinterest might be so important for you. I shouldn't neglect to talk about Instagram, which is another really important channel for me. All of the creative team, all of the designers, the photo editors, the editors on staff, everybody has access to that Instagram. So
That's everyone taking pictures wherever they're going. And I really credit our special projects editor, Kelsey Keith, for really spearheading that and bringing it to tens of thousands of people really quickly by really focusing on quality. And I think that that's part of this conversation, that there are always these new avenues that are emerging for communication. And it's incorrect to think that you can just slap the same messaging throughout and expect it to resonate. You have to be respectful of every channel and really think about what are the dynamics and parameters of this conversation, and how am I going to respond to that?
That can be kind of difficult, a whole bunch of things turn up. Which ones do you invest time in?
Totally,
and how
absolutely.
Do you, and then how, if you don't invest time in them, how do you know how they work?
It's true. I mean, but things emerge all the time, and maybe we'll return to them. I mean, but it's important to understand them and use them yourself so that you can use your skills of what you do. I mean, again, essentially what I do is I tell stories. I'm a storyteller, and so when these new channels emerge, it's my job to figure out whether or not that's a good avenue for the story I'm telling.
Very inspiring.
So.
Yeah. I guess personally, I'm like the world's worst social media user, and so I'm like the ultimate curator. I don't sort of want to listen to the feedback loop, but I listen talking to you. I can obviously see the advantage and see the things that maybe that I should do.
It's fun and it's painful. I mean, don't get me wrong. When you put something out there and you produce something, when somebody comes back and they're like, "This sucks," of course that's going to bother you, and especially if it, you can read it on your phone when you wake up in the morning and you're like, "God, do I suck? I guess I don't know." So anyway,
that's why
it's a double-edged sword, but I think that the benefits far outweigh the pain.
Mm-hmm. I thought there's something interesting about offline versus online and being able to kind of sense that feedback loop with the traditional print media as well.
Well, yes. And then also feedback in person. Nobody's going to be like, "I hated your story," or, "I hate those stairs." Sometimes people do ask me questions that, about, I've had a question in a live context as to whether or not we make people take their shoes off before we photograph them. So, that kind of feedback comes back to me, but I don't know. I think that people feel safer in the cloak of anonymity that the internet allows them. And so that's why you see a lot of disgruntled people. And I wonder, maybe they just haven't had enough caffeine. I don't know.
Love. I'm going to open that up to the floor now and see if there are any questions before I continue. Hi. So the question's about how do you decide tone, how do you decide content?
Okay. Well, Dwell launched about 14 years ago. And I don't know, I'm just going to kind of do the Cliff's Notes here really quickly for anybody that doesn't know Dwell. But we're an independent magazine. We're a company of 50 people. And again, we've been around since 2000. And when Dwell launched, I worked for other shelter publications that whatever, they weren't Dwell. And when Dwell came out, it was as if there was this fresh way of talking about design and architecture in a more accessible way. And that was exciting to me. And I think that is what we've always tried to retain, this idea that we can talk about important portions of design and architecture, but to do so in an accessible way. Not necessarily talk about design with a capital D, and not dilute it to the point that it's superficial either. And then to do so with a certain irreverence. And I think that all of those ingredients have been a part of Dwell's tone and voice. And so we try to continue in that vein. The founding editor, Carrie Jacobs, wrote an essay called The Fruit Bowl Manifesto about Dwell and what we stand for. And that essay rings just as true today as it did when she wrote it 14 years ago. And it's a great essay.
Wonderful.
I hope that answered your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes.
So you've obviously been in publication for a long time. A couple of years ago, when competitor of yours, Dameron, went under, I'm wondering, was everybody at your publication equally freaked out?
When Domino folded, it was a really hard time for all magazines. I mean, it is a tough landscape. Oh my gosh, what's happening over there? It's a tough landscape for printed publications. Not only are sales down on the newsstand, there are a lot fewer places to buy a magazine in the first place. You know, when bookstores close, that's bad news for us. And in 2008, 2009, 2010, those are really tough economic years, and everybody was worried. So I think that happened in 2009.
How did that change? You know, just maybe some of us understand what happened as a result of that change, but maybe you could describe how is publishing different?
Well, Domino was a great idea that came a little too early for its time, and it's wonderful because they've come back with their special issues.
What Domino? Why?
Because it was a magazine. It is a magazine about products and buying products, and and also presented in a really fresh, vibrant way. And it was really, really, really successful with the audience. And it's wonderful to have a passionate readership and you rely on your readers, but you also, as a magazine, rely very heavily on that moment when you can just convince somebody to pick up the issue on the newsstand for the first time. Those people that are like, what magazine is this? I'm going to try it. That moment and that behavior is just as important to the life and success of a magazine as it is to retain your loyal subscribers. So I think that when it comes to continuing to create a publication, a print publication that is relevant and stays, again, it's all about being nimble. It's all about thinking about the different channels that emerge and using every single one of them and, having a strategy in place there.
Mm-hmm. So print in some ways is one of your places to kind of deliver content.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just one of them, but an important one. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to, and I'm not going to believe that people aren't going to read books and magazines anymore. I think that there is a pleasure in turning a page that cannot be replaced. And I think that the time that you spend with a book or a magazine is important. In the same way that I believe that it's important the time you spend listening to a record, the way that the producer or the musician wanted you to listen to it. They wanted you to listen to it and pace it out, and they had a whole idea in mind. The same is true for books and magazines. So while I'll never say that I believe that people aren't going to want to read that way, I just think there's going to be a lot fewer to choose from.
Okay. Let's talk about Dwell on Design, your event.
Sure.
And how a live experience allows you to kind of interact with your community as well, and the importance of that. Yeah,
sure. So Dwell on Design is our annual conference we have in Los Angeles, and this is our 9th year. Last year we welcomed over 30,000 people to the LA Convention Center on a weekend, which is no small feat. And we do programming all day of the show, and that programming is designed and produced by the editors themselves. It's not some third party that comes in and does that portion for us. The same people that work on the magazine are the same people that work on the show, that work on the social media, that are taking the pictures for Instagram, that are tweeting. It's all the same. So the difference in the way that we can interact with our audience, we can see people's faces, which is always wonderful, and extremely gratifying to see people excited to show up and just walk the floors and talk to us after we're finished with panel discussions. And through the feedback we get there, that definitely influences the kinds of stories that we tell the next year.
Are events content?
Are events cocktails?
Content.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Cocktails. Do you have cocktails at your events?
Yes, so many cocktails. Sorry. Okay, what was the question?
Are
I apologize.
events content? Do you see events as content?
Are events content? I think content comes from events. I think a conversation is content. Mm-hmm. I think that it's another platform and opportunity for conversation.
Yep.
So, and I do get content from it, of course. I mean, we've got video, we've got photographers who are taking shots. Conversation with designers, we're asking them to come and bring products and prototypes and talk to us, and yeah.
So it's like a content opportunity. Create something where you can produce multiple types of content,
Or people in our audience who are interested in our content, because our audience is 50-50 trade and consumer, 50% of our readers are accredited architects and designers. They can also come to Dwell on Design and get their continuing education credits. That's content too. So, I mean, I think it's a lot of different things, but it's all Dwell.
Sure. It's all Dwell. I like that. Any other questions? Sure.
Do you have a dedicated staff for social media? Do you have a dedicated staff for social media? How many are they?
We have a digital editor, and she oversees our social media channels. During Dwell on Design LA, for the crazy crush leading up to it, we also have somebody who works with us on a contract basis to handle Dwell on Design, our handle on Twitter. But Allie Weiss, our digital editor, she mans it all. All of the editors contribute tweets, and they contribute on Pinterest and Instagram as well. That's all part of what they're producing. So it's not, we don't think of it as print and digital. We just think of it as content.
Do you work in publishing?
No, we actually have a startup which is called Dada, which is like a LinkedIn for visual artists. I actually curate a page. We have a page on Facebook where I also get, lovely, whatever. I don't like this page, but so I'm curious about, like, you have different people curating different social media platforms, or they all do everything?
No, it's really under the direction. I'm pretty enmeshed in the strategy for all of the content channels, and Allie does a great job managing them all and paying attention to it. And then I do as well. Other people kind of dip in and out, but I definitely make it part of my daily routine.
It's interesting. So, in some ways you're representing a visual artist, and you put up their work, and someone's bitching about it, and in some ways, you're putting up maybe there's some work of a company that you know pretty well. You're obviously putting up with an independent point of view, but there's a crowd there who are, critiquing it in a very shallow way.
Yeah, on surface alone, yeah. I think that a lot of people assess the quality of design by looking at something, and I think that is a really short-sighted way to think about design.
Do you in any way provide feedback to the people that you write about?
Definitely. I mean, I think that the people whose homes that are featured, they pay attention. The architects and designers, they pay attention too, because they want to see those questions, and they're happy to talk about the projects. Remember, these people have put months and months and so much money and time and dreaming about making this project they're so proud of. If somebody wants to ask them a question about where did you get that flooring, or how did you solve this problem for energy, they're going to be delighted. So we're happy to be the platform where that connection can happen.
Wonderful. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
So I noticed on your site that of course some amazing open architecture, and it seems like you're expanding a little bit more into featuring more well-designed items such as goods. Are you guys going to push that a little further, or is there going to be maybe a connection towards the original design and home and architecture connection?
Well, we've always really highlighted and featured well-designed objects and furnishings. I mean, that's always been part of what we do as well, in addition to the architecture and the residential design. But if you're asking about commerce, is that what you mean when you're talking about products and that kind of stuff?
Well, there seems to be a really big push, especially with the new technology and hardware, really design focused versus essentially it used to be just like, can we make it cheap and as cheap as we can make it now? There's a huge focus, especially with the bigger community, building well-designed products for certain markets.
Yeah.
Do you comment about technology products?
We do. I mean, technology in the residential context is something that we're always thinking of. It moves quickly, and it's something that we've always covered. It's just, I don't think that it's useful for us to archive an article from 2005 about cell phones, so you don't find that as easily, but it's definitely something that we're constantly thinking about. The concept of the smart home is absolutely of interest to us, and the double side to those innovations as well.
Super. Any other questions? Well, I'd like to thank Amanda Dameron for coming. She's the editor-in-chief at Dwell Media. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. Thanks.